Good Erev Shabbos, everybody. Welcome back once again to the weekly Shir in Pirkei Avos. Rabbi Gershon Aftzin, Cincinnati, Ohio. And today, which we are in Chodesh Elul Tavshin Pei Hey, we are starting our fourth cycle of learning Pirkei Avos this year. What's different about this cycle being Pirkei Avos is 6 weeks, 6 prakim, and now we only have 3 weeks to Rosh Hashanah. So the minig is to learn 2 prakim a week. Now,
I could buy the thing $200. Straight on, just buy it.
So while really we could learn a Mishna from each of the 2 prakim, we are going to be learning 2 Mishnayos in Perek Aleph, 2 Mishnahs in Perek Aleph. We've discussed some of this before, but we're going to come up with new ideas and things that we didn't talk about before. And we're talking about a topic that's extremely important for every single Yid, and that's the concept of Aseh L'Chorav. Now, let's start with the basic Mishnayos. In general, if one Tana tells us something, the second Tana doesn't have to repeat it, especially not in the same Masechta, and especially not in the same Perek. And that's why it is uniquely eye-opening that in Perek Aleph, the first Perek of Pirkei Avos, we have 2 Mishnayos, Mishnah Vav, Mishnah Tezayin, 6 and 16, which start off the same way. You have Yeshua ben Prachya. He says, Aseh L'Chorav, Knei L'Chachover, Danes Kodol L'Chavschus. And then you have Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel starts off the same thing, and he says, Aseh L'Chorav. Seemingly, if Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya already told us the important Hayrah, the important lesson of Aseh L'Chorav, so we don't need Rabbi Gamliel years later to come up and say the same thing. So right away that begs the question, what is the difference between the Aseh L'Chorav in Mishnah Vav and the Aseh L'Chorav in Mishnah Tezayin? There must be a fundamental difference between the two. Something must have changed, whether it's in meaning, whether it's in the going on of Klal Yisrael, that would demand a repeat of the same words. So we're going to have to find out that is it either a new shot in the words Aseh L'Chorav, or is it a new era of Klal Yisrael, which would automatically demand a repeat of the words Aseh L'Chorav. So let's start with the simple taich. We'll start with the simple understanding of the words Aseh L'Chorav, the way it's explained by the basic Mefarshei HaMishnah. So first and foremost, we have to establish that there is a unique benefit to learn Torah from a Rav. Chazal tell us in Ksubis, Kufir Aleph and Aleph, that one Amoira sent a message to his other Amoira, and he tells them that even though I know that you're a Godel, that you're someone that's self-sufficient to learn Torah on your own, always learn Torah from a Rav. The benefit that you get from processing Torah that's taught by somebody else, especially a Rav, is something that's extremely beneficial. So, first of all, the importance of learning Torah from a Rav. In addition, it's important to learn Torah, the Mefarshim say, mirav echad, from one Rav. Meaning, obviously, we have a Mishna in Pirkei Avos that says, Eizu chacham haloymid mikol adam. We're not that somebody that's smart is somebody that can learn Torah lessons in life from everybody. Every single person has a story and a story to share and a lesson to tell. There is a lot to be learned from everybody, and there are many, many different ways to understanding many different things. And somebody that can learn to appreciate different approaches different understandings and different life experiences of people will obviously benefit tremendously. We're not talking about that type of learning. We're talking about that's like life lessons and ideas. But then there is a general mahalech hachayim, a derech in life, a derech in learning, a derech in life. And that, the Tana is telling us, you have to find your Rav, you have to find your derech. And aseh l'charav, this is important that you keep to your Rav, and this is your derech. And on top of that, the term that he uses is aseh. Aseh means like make. What does it mean, aseh l'charav? Say appoint. What does it mean, aseh l'charav, to appoint a Rav? So aseh could also mean force yourself. Forcing yourself can be for two reasons. First and foremost, most of us don't like to accept upon ourselves the authority of other people. So aseh l'charav, it takes a certain amount of inner courage to ask someone else to be your Rav, that you're ready to be mekabel, you're ready to accept hadracha from somebody else. So that's obviously why we have to have the word aseh, which means I know it's difficult and I want you to do it anyways. But then the Rambam says something even more. And that is, what happens if you're actually the smartest person in town? You're the Rav von Stadt. You are the leader of the city, the leader of the community. So you look around and you say, who can be that person that could be my Rav? Who could be that aseh l'charav? And that's what the Mishna is saying, that it doesn't mean that your Rav is smarter than you. The key here is that the person is not you. We are extremely self-aware, and we also see things through our own lens. That's the way, and we see ourselves and we justify our faults very, very easily. And it's not bad, it's just a fact of life. And therefore, it's important, even if the person is not as great as you, aseh l'charav, break yourself, get somebody else into your life that can keep you grounded, that can keep you guided, that can keep you focused on what you have to do. So that is the first Mishnah, aseh l'charav. And then you have Mishnah Tezayin. Mishnah Tezayin, which was said by Rabbi Gamliel. And he says, also aseh l'charav. So here, Mefarshim say, different explanations, but Pashtos, what is he adding? According to some of the Mefarshim, he is adding the concept of Hoira. Means the first Mishnah is for limud, is for direction in life. And he is talking about somebody, a Rav to paskin for you. Aseh l'charav, more of in halacha. It's not in life, not in hadracha, but in halacha. Not always is the Rav, the mashpia that you have, your Rav. Really, your person needs two figures in their life. They need a mashpia, someone to be madrich them, and they need a Rav. And many times it's two different people. There's two different aspects of a Yid's life. There's the halachic avodas Hashem, and there's the inner avodas Hashem, and there's the hadracha of avodas Hashem. So aseh l'charav, the first one, is going on the hadracha and the limud, and the aseh l'charav, the second one, is going on the halachic aspects of a Rav. That is one way to understand the difference between the two. Other Mefarshim say that no, it's the same Hoira, but Rabbi Gamliel, he actually is explaining why you need to have aseh l'charav. In the earlier generations, they just said, Reb Shua ben Prachya said aseh l'charav, but he didn't explain why. Later on, we know as the generations get lower, people demand a little bit more understanding of why. Don't just tell me to do it. So he said aseh l'charav v'histalik min hasafik. He added that word v'histalik min hasafik to explain the aseh l'charav. While other Mefarshim say, this is from the Tiferes Yisrael, that the aseh l'charav, the first one, was on that a person should have, there's always should be a general figure of authority in the city, in the atmosphere that he's in. And the Aseh L'Charav, the second one, is more of a personal authority. But either way, these Mefarshim tend to explain that we're talking about, two distinct parts of Aseh L'Charav. Very fascinating is, just to take 2 minutes to diverge for a minute, is to point out something very interesting. And that is, if you look in the Mishnayos of Pirkei Avos, especially Perek Rishon, it gives us the timeline and the who came after who, and the way that the Mishnah, the Tana, describes it. Each one was mekabel from the next one. Kiblu mehem. Each one accepted from the one before. When it comes to Mishnah Tez Zayin, it speaks about Rabbi Gamliel. Now, this Rabbi Gamliel, everybody knows that there were multiple Gamliels and Shimon ben Gamliels. Because what happened was that Hillel HaZokin, the famous Hillel, he had two sons, Shimon and Gamliel. The Nasi after Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was Shimon. And he had a son, Gamliel, who had a son, Shimon ben Gamliel, who had another son, Gamliel. The two Gamliels are, one is called Gamliel HaZokin, Gamliel the elder, and the second Gamliel is called Rabbi Gamliel de Yavne. He was the one that led Klal Yisrael after the Churban in the city of Yavne, that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai procured from the Roman government. And then you had Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel II, who was the father of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, whose name was Yehuda. So he broke the chain of Shimon and Gamliel's. But he had two sons named Shimon and Gamliel. But so when you hear in the Mishnah the Gamliels, you have a lot of different Gamliels and Shimon ben Gamliel. So you always have to keep track of who we're talking about in this Mishnah. While there are very few Mefarshim that say that we are talking about the son of Hillel, the son Gamliel, most Mefarshim of the Mefarshim of the Mishnah say we are talking about the grandson of Hillel, Rabbi Gamliel HaZokin, the elder Rabbi Gamliel. And the question is, how come it doesn't say that he was Mekabel, Kiblu Mehem? Why doesn't it say that he was Mekabel from the generations before? Why was that left out? So some Mefarshim bring down, the Bartanura brings down, that there was something, that very, very unique thing that happened right before Rabbi Gamliel's Nesius. And that is, everyone is aware, we got Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. For generations, there was one Mahalach in Torah. There was one Mesoira in Kabbalah HaTorah. Whatever way it was, there were generation to generation, there was a Mesoira of Kabbalah HaTorah. Came the time of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and there was Yeridas HaDoiris. And you started having splits. You had the Derech of Shammai, you had the Derech of Hillel, like we have in the Shir Tanya for today. The idea is you have two approaches now and two schools of learning in Klal Yisrael. And that really means that to a certain extent, the clear Mesoira was lost. And that's why the Mefarshim say we didn't want to use the term Mekabel, because they really lacked the Kabbalah HaTorah. The generations after Hillel and Shammai, they didn't fully Mekabel because there was a lack of clarity. And as a matter of fact, the Mefarshim say that that's exactly the reason why he had to repeat the Aseh L'Charav v'Istalik min HaSafek. As long as there was one Kabbalah, so therefore Aseh L'Charav, there was one idea of to have a Rav, a leader, but there was no doubts in the Mahalach HaTorah. Now that there became Sveikos in Torah, and it became Sveikos even if the Rav that you picked, maybe he's wrong, because you have two approaches. Maybe Beis Shammai is right, maybe Beis Hillel is right. Now there are options. Now there are questions. Now there are sveikos in Klal Yisrael. And that's why there's a tremendous need for Gamliel to say, stick with your Rav and don't get involved in the machloikis. V'yistalek min asofik. Don't get involved in the sveikis and the machloikis. You have your mahalach. You have to repeat it because now in Klal Yisrael, there was a resurgence of sveikus. And therefore, you should keep to your Rav and don't let the sveikis get to you. However, other Mefarshim point out, and I think this is quite the glat pshat, that there is a huge difference when there is a father to son succession or a rebbe to a talmid succession. If you think about the Nesius, today we are in Beis Elul. Aleph Elul was the anniversary of the Rebbe Rashab. Yud Gimel Elul, the anniversary of the Frierdiker Rebbe. We're getting to Chai Elul, the birthday and Yortzeit, the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. We're dealing with the Nesius of Chassidus. So for the first few generations, the Baal Shem Tov went to his Talmud, the Magid. From the Magid, it went to his Talmud, the Alter Rebbe. It was only in the third generation that it became a family dynasty, a Malchus Beis David, that from the Alter Rebbe went to his son and grandson and great-grandson, that it became a family mahalach. And there's a big difference when a Talmud takes over his Rebbe or when a son takes over his father. And that is, a Talmud is mekabel. He doesn't have the essence of his Rebbe. He's mekabel. And therefore, all the previous generations, where the Nesius went from Rabbeim to Talmidim, it wasn't their children. They used the term mekabel. However, when it was the grandson of Hillel taking the Nesius from his father and grandfather, and his child taking the Nesius from him, they don't want to use the word mekabel. In a certain way, it's not because the generation was lower, because the Nesius was higher. When a son takes the father, he has the etzem of the father. He's not mekabel from his father. He is his father. He's one with his father. It's one Metzias. So there's not, mekabel means that there's a giver and there's a receiver and they accept one from the other. The halacha says that yoidesh bimkoim hamoidesh. The yoidesh doesn't receive things from the one that gave him the Yerusha. The yoidesh takes the place of the one that gives over the Yerusha. It's one entity. It's one Metzias. And therefore, because it was now a family of Nesiim from the time of Hillel through Rabbeinu HaKadosh, we didn't want to use the word mekabel, because to stress the fact that it's actually deeper, the kesher now from one nasi to the next is actually deeper. So that's a different approach to understanding why the lack of the word kiblu mehem, why it's not here. But now let's take the asay l'charav a step further. And Mefarshim point out that the same words, asay l'charav, that's repeated twice, because it's referring to two totally different directives. It may have the same word, but it actually means something else. The first asay l'charav is that you should appoint for yourself a Rav. You have to have a madrich. You have to have somebody that will guide you, instruct you, teach you, illuminate the derech Hashem for you. Asay l'charav, you have to have a Rav. However, the second asay l'charav is asay l'charav. You have to become a Rav yourself. Make yourself a Rav. The first asay l'charav means appoint above you, for you, a Rav. Asay l'charav means that you have to become a Rav. What does that mean, that you have to become a Rav? Everybody knows that the famous vort, and that is that if you know Aleph, teach Aleph. There's no such thing as you know something in Torah and you don't share it. And as a matter of fact, Bashkocha Pratis, this week, I was doing research because I was giving shiurim to the Talmidim in the halachas of Aliyah L'Regel, Hachana for Tishrei. We're learning the sugya of Aliyah L'Regel. And I saw a very interesting thing in the Rambam. Now it's famous, it's from the Chazal, but I never really grasped it. I never really heard it until this week. And that is, there are many people which are exempt from going to Oil Regel. Women are exempt. Young children that cannot go to Aliyah Regel are exempt. And then you have people which are exempt if they're blind. The reason why they're exempt if they're blind, because the part of Aliyah Regel is to see and experience the Kedusha. Leirois Pnei Hashem. So therefore, if you can't see, so you're blind. If you can't hear, you're putter, because it says L'man Yishmu, that when they come to the Beis HaMikdash by Hakel, they have to be able to hear the words of the Eibishter. Somebody that can't hear is also putter. But then the halacha says that somebody that can't speak is putter. Why is someone that can't speak putter? Chazal say because the Torah says L'man Yilmedu, because you have to learn. So it's a shaila, big question. A guy can't speak, he could still learn. He could see the words. He can hear the shir. He can't talk. Just because he can't talk, why does that exempt him from, he can learn. Just because the Torah says L'man Yilmedu, why does that exempt a mute person from going to the Beis HaMikdash? And the Rambam says, because in Yiddishkeit, there's no such thing as learning without teaching. If the person can't give over what he learned because he's mute, he really did not learn. Because in Yiddishkeit, your learning is connected with sharing what you learn with somebody else. It's just an amazing halacha, clear halacha. Which means that learning in Yiddishkeit, if you know Aleph, you have to teach Aleph. So asay l'charav v'istalik min asafik. There is no better way than getting clarity of your own learning than by becoming a teacher of what you know. You don't have to be the biggest expert on every subject, but everyone knows something. And it's everyone's responsibility to teach what they know to somebody else. We all know what the Gemara tells us in Makis. The Gemara says that I learned a lot from my Rabbeim. I learned even more from my Chaverim. From my students, I learned the most. Because when you teach something, the clarity that you get, the subject matter gets reinforced by you many, many times over. And therefore, the Mishna is telling us, as the second asay l'charav is not about accepting a mentor upon yourself, but on the contrary, you becoming a Rav for somebody else. And really, it's a step further. When you become a teacher, that itself doesn't just mean a suffix. Suffix is obviously the lack of clarity in learning. But suffix is also synonymous with the Yetzer Hara, who's trying to give us sveikes. And the fact is, there's a famous story of a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. And the chassid of the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, he said that my Rebbe teaches me that we can't have gaiva. And therefore, I worked very hard to be humble, to be an anav, not to make my position, full of myself. He says there's one exception. The exception is when I'm fighting the Yetzer Hara. When the Yetzer Hara tries to get me to do an Avera, I say, I would love to, but I can't. So I'm the Talmud of the Alter Rebbe. It's not befitting someone of my stature to be able to do an Avera. He uses the position, the stature, what he calls the gaiva, to prevent him from doing something that's negative. Such an asay l'charav, such a level of gaiva, such a self-promotion is not only not bad, but it's so important. Because when you hold of yourself in this regard, not the way you're putting down somebody else, but when it's coming to fighting the Yetzer Hara, v'yistalik min hasafek, then Asay l'charav, build yourself up. Say, I can't do an Aveda, I'm a Rav. I have Talmidim, I have Talmidos. What would they say if they found out that I did such and such an Aveda? Use that position of Rav to actually protect you from doing Avedas. Asay l'charav v'histalig min hasofik. And then I want to add even a deeper level. And this I saw in the Sefer Me'amloyas on Pirkei Avos. I hope everyone is still with me. The Me'amloyas says something very, very, very fascinating. And this is very important, and we think about hiskashtus to tzaddikim. He says Rabbi Gamliel is teaching us a very, very big foundation in the importance of connecting to tzaddikim. Listen to what he says. He says, when a person is lost in Avodas Hashem, there are two tools that Hashem uses to bring this person back to the derech. Person is being mevulvel. Every one of us can understand what it means to be mevulvel. We get stuck, we get lost. We're going through life and we're missing. So Hashem has two paths that he uses. One is he sends tzaddikim. In each generation, Hashem sends down tzaddikim, and they are moires ha'am. They teach the people, they're madrechas, they give us hadrachas ha'chayim, so that we can know the right way. And then there is yisurim. Lo yaleinu, somebody suffers, and then the person says, why am I getting these suffering? It makes the person wonder and hopefully gets them back on track, that they should do tshuva, etc. What is the difference between the two? There are two fundamental differences between the two. First and foremost, one is painful and one is not. We don't want to come close to the Eibishter with Yisurim. We'd rather obviously come straight with the tzaddikim, the Derech HaMelech, who wants to go with Yisurim, who wants to go through the process. But there's even more than just the pain, the suffering. There is the fact that when you have Yisurim, not always do you actually know what you have to fix. You know that you need to fix something, but the clarity of what that is that's causing the Yisurim could elude you. You could still be left with the suffix. However, if you're connected to a tzaddik and you have to shape up in Avodas Hashem, you'll go to the tzaddik and the tzaddik will tell you. We have the Yom Yom now where it says that when somebody went into a first Yechidus with the Rebbe, even if they didn't really change the most, the fact that he went into Yechidus by a tzaddik takes off the Orlas Halev, removes the grubkeit and the concealment of the heart. The idea is that Asay l'chorav, if you pick the way of connecting to the Eibishter through the tzaddik, tistaleg min hasofek, you're gonna enable yourself to get away from having to have Yisurim and be left with Sveikos, because you have a clear path in your Avodas Hashem. Now we know that in Tavshim Mem Zayin, 1947, the summer, the Rebbe came out very, very strongly with the miftzah, the campaign of Asay l'chorav. Now, I want to give some background. In the 70s, the Rebbe asked volunteers in each community should appoint mashpiyim for the kehila. This was always a minig by Chassidim and Yiddish kehilos, that the community had a communal mashpia who cared about the ruchnias of the kehila, made sure there were fabrengens, made sure people were inspired in Avodas Hashem. He was a mashpia kloli. That was the Rebbe's campaign, that each community should have mashpiyim, should have people that care about the ruchnias, not just a rov, but a mashpia of the kehila. However, in the mid-80s, in the MEMS, the Rebbe said it's not enough that there should be general mashpiyim. Asay l'charav, now is the time for everyone to have a personal mashpia. And the Rebbe said that this is a campaign that's a bakasha nafshas. It's a soul request from the depths of the Rebbe's heart. The Rebbe says it's even deeper than that. I just don't have the words to use. The idea of asay l'charav. The Rebbe says when you speak to your audience, if you feel that the audience will be more receptive, if you don't use the Rebbe's name, the Rebbe says, don't use my name. Just say the Mishna says asay l'charav. Whatever it will take for Klal Yisrael to understand that to get through the Golos till the Geula, now it's so important, asay l'charav. Now I just want you to take a moment and think. Let's speak practical for a minute. Has there ever been a time in the history of the world where therapy is so available, so used, and so normal? Everyone today, even the secular world, understands that they need a life coach. They need someone to durchreden. It's more and more. It's never existed in the history of the world. Like the last few years, it's just getting more and more and more. And this idea of asay l'charav is getting bigger and bigger. Hold on one second. Ellie, I'm in the share. Everything okay? And this, the Rebbe wants that every single person should have their personal mashpia. The Rebbe said, when you connected to your mashpia, this is the way the brachas come through, your asay l'charav. And the Rebbe screamed and begged and pleaded that every single person should have a rav, should have a mashpia. Now, it's fascinating. There's a story. The Rabbi Yossi Hecht, who's the Rebbe Shliach in Eilat, he wrote it right after the Rebbe spoke about asay l'charav. He sent a letter to the Rebbe. In the letter, there was a quote from a tshuva, from a response of the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer, I don't have to tell anyone that's listening to the shir, was one of the greatest poskim and chachamim of the last generations. And it seems that he had, either in his community or the community nearby, wherever it was, that asked his guidance, there was a machlokes between two shuls. And the Chassam Sofer was trying to make shalom between them, bring it together, come up with like a mahalich that these shuls could live b'shalom u b'shalva. And he finishes off his thing that he has this idea what he needs to do. He says, but I feel in this case, I need to make sure I have an asay l'charav. I need to find myself a rav to direct me in this path of achdus. I need a rav. Now we're talking about the Chassam Sofer, who was one of the leading rabbonim of his generation. And yet when it came to certain sensitive matters, what lashon does he use? He says that I need to have my own asay l'charav. So Rabbi Hecht wrote this to the Rebbe to reinforce and to show it, the importance of this campaign. And the Rebbe says to please print it in the koivtz, and people should be aware of this answer of the Chassam Sofer. Because asay l'charav is a vital derech in our avodas Hashem today. And this is especially true when we're living in a time where, as Chassidim of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, we don't see the Rebbe. So how do we know how to apply the Rebbe's words, holy words and direction to our own avodah today in Tavshin Pei Hey? And that's why the idea of asay l'charav is vital, and it's of essence, and it's the yisoid in avodas Hashem. Now, I want to go a step further, and based on the Mefarshim, obviously, connect this to the whole idea of our avodah to bring Mashiach. And that is that Rabbi Gamliel tells us, asay l'charav v'istalek min hasafik. Hasafik is gematria amalek. Before, one of the main jobs of Melech HaMashiach, it says Mashiach will be v'yilchay melchemes Hashem. He will fight the wars of the Eibishter. One of those wars is Mechias Amalek. Unfortunately, we have yet to get rid of Amalek in its entirety. And oimdim aleinu l'chaleseinu, and Hashem should actually help that Yidden now in Eretz HaKodesh and wherever we are, we should internalize that Timche Zecher Amalek. It's a real thing to not have Rachmanis and get rid of Amalek. But the idea is that Amalek is not just a people. Amalek is gematria of the word Suffolk that wants to bring Svekis in our whole Mahalach and our whole way of serving the Eibishter. That is the goal of Amalek. And as the darkness of Golos gets stronger and stronger, the need and the determination that we need to have to fight Amalek has to be bigger and bigger. And comes Rabbi Gamliel. Gamliel says, you want to get rid of Amalek, vistalik min hasafek. You want to get rid of the Amalek in your life. Make sure you have the Aseh L'Charav. Make sure you're Mekayim. Make sure you have a Mashpia. With your personal Mashpia, just to have general guidance, Amalek is very smart today. Amalek has figured out how to get into our minds, how to get into our hearts. In today's day and age, it's not enough general guidance. We need to have a personal Mashpia. Only with Aseh L'Charav can you be mistalik min hasafik. And I would like to also add one more nekuda to this. And that is that regarding Mashiach, the Rambam says the Mashiach will have two parts. He will be a melech, he will be a king that we will listen to and we will take his guidance. But he will also be a Rav. He will be somebody that will teach the world, teach Klal Yisrael, from the greatest of the great, from the Avos till the Anoshim Shutim. Mashiach will be the ultimate teacher of Klal Yisrael. Now, if we want to get rid of Amalek, the Rebbe said if we want to bring Mashiach, it's not enough just to follow Mashiach as a melech. Aseh L'Charav, you have to learn the Torah about Mashiach. The way to bring Mashiach, the Derech Yeshara, is not just by following directives, but we push it, Aseh L'Charav, Mashiach has to be our teacher. We have to learn the Torah of Mashiach, the parts of Torah which discuss in Yonim of Mashiach. When we bring Mashiach into our heads, when we bring in Yonim Mashiach into our minds, like we spoke about in the previous year last week, that Eini Dar Ela B'Mkoim Torah, when it's Aseh L'Charav, when Mashiach is your teacher, when there's the Torah about Mashiach in your hearts and in your brains, then V'Istalek Min HaSofek. Then we're able to fight Amalek. Then we're able to get rid of the Shailas, the Klippa of Golos. That's as long as Mashiach is your Rav, Aseh L'Charav, you're going to have the koyach to be V'Istalek Min HaSofek. So I want every single person, as we start this fourth cycle of Pirkei Avos, first and foremost to be mekabel, if they don't have, to make sure they have a mashpia. And on a very literal level, to speak to other people and whatever language they understand, that they should have a mashpia. It's so vital. Aseh L'Charav, they should be mekayim. It's spoken about twice in Pirkei Avos. And then, of course, on a deeper level, the Aseh L'Charav about learning the Torah of Mashiach. We should be zeicha to these galos, and it should be taken from Yad Mamish.